and we'll just get things kicked off. So before I count down, Keegan, I try to do it like really, really slow motion because that way I can see from a distance how long it's going to take. We may get some viewers, we may not. Usually we do have a few regulars that I would look forward to seeing. Anyway, I'm going to drop a link now that Trent's here to the pop-out chat. If you click on that, you'll be able to follow the live chat. And if you look at the bottom of our Hangouts, it'll tell you how many viewers there are. Let's see here. The Hangout Toolbox has not been working recently, unfortunately. That's how you can get like a banner that says your name on it and stuff. But whatevs. Sometimes you don't get all the features. Here is the pop-out chat. All right, if you guys could click on that, then we will be good to go. Here, we already have one viewer. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody.
Okay, rock and roll.
Oh, down to 0 again.
Apparently,
He got scared. Must have chased him away.
It's like, oh God, they recognize me.
Yep, they recognize me. They were just checking profiling.
They were profiling.
Very intimidated. They were intimidated by the unprofessionalism. All right, well, guys, we're gonna get this thing kicked off here. And Trent, before we get started though, for our topic, is this what we're talking about? Are you cool with introducing it?
I don't know what introducement means.
So we're gonna do the how to win friends and influence people.
Okay.
Is that was what you had suggested, right?
Are you riffing on what's going on in Des Moines?
No. I wasn't trying to go off of that. No.
They're having some issues with this in the Des Moines group right now. In the Des Moines.
Yeah. Their community is reacting to it though in a it's in like a thoughtful way. They're using it as a chance to like self-reflect, which I think we can all use that from time to time. And if you don't have enough time for self-reflection, well, get a podcast. Yeah. So anyhow, I mean, we could also just talk about like this local gaming convention here with Gamicon and see, what, that could be our main topic. I mean, I'm going to have you talk about it at some point, Keegan. I just don't know if we want to do main topic or what. So, I mean, okay, let's do main topic then. We'll just make that main topic, and then we'll see, what other things will come up, and just kind of talk about, like regional conventions, what to expect from them, and like the sort of the inner working, not inner workings necessarily, but just like, how they might differ, what you might get from one that you wouldn't get from a bigger convention, and then vice versa, what to go in with, realistic expectations. Does that sound cool?
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
Sweet. All right. So, I've got our game reviews here written down, and we're going to get started off then. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, The Board, and The Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, The Board, and The Ugly, Joe Sallin, being joined tonight by 3 wonderful contributors, 2 of which are my regular co-hosts, TC Reed out in Portland. How you doing tonight, TC?
Doing good, trying to keep my voice. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, well, it's okay. I'll talk over you whenever you start talking, so that way you won't have to use it as much.
Yeah, well, like that's something new.
Oh, ouch. It's all right, TC. Every time you start talking, I'm just going to zip my lips. It'll be over. Well, that's TC. Also joining me from the central Iowa region is Trent Ham. How you doing, Trent?
All right. How you doing?
Me, I'm okay. I'm a little bit disappointed that we were supposed to get a bunch of snow, and all my high school kids are like counting on tomorrow being a snow day, and it looks like it might not happen. But that's not the case for everybody, as is with our guest who's joining us for the very first time, and he's from over on the eastern side of Iowa, actually in the same town that my little brother lives in, and that's Cedar Rapids. His name is Keegan, and he's here joining us for the first time. How you doing tonight, Keegan?
Not too bad. Yes, I'm happy not to have work tomorrow since I work for the school district and we're getting all that snow you thought you were going to.
Yeah, they definitely painted us right into the band up until like about 2 hours ago, or well, I guess it was maybe 4 hours ago, but it's just been, little by little. It's like when I was a little kid and I'd be like, Mom, it's supposed to snow. She'd tell me it was supposed to snow. And then every single hour I'd be like, when's it going to snow? When's it going to snow? And she'd be like, oh, it's not going to happen for another hour now. Oh, now it's going to be 2 more hours. It doesn't look like we're going to get any snow. Oh.
And then your trust of your mother was permanently sheared.
Yes, I held my mom accountable for the weather. That's right. As everybody should. Well, we got, I think one of our viewers here in the live chat is right in that swath that's getting hammered. If I'm not mistaken, Madison, Wisconsin is probably getting hit pretty hard. And we got Jerry joining us in from there. It's good to see you, Jerry. You should join us in our live chat. We record all these episodes live on YouTube. So anyway, hopefully it's not going to be dangerous out there on the roads, but not any more dangerous than it needs to be so that you cancel school, right? Right, Keeghan?
Exactly. Just dangerous enough not to have any school. Exactly what we're looking for.
No accidents, no bad things. Just enough so that way you can stay home and actually do things like inside people do, like play board games. Like maybe one of our other listeners and viewers who's here from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where the national pastime involves sitting around a table and flicking discs and crokinole. So anyway, that's we got all sorts of different people, and we're all from the north here. Even you count, TC. It's the Atlantic coast, but you still count from being from the north.
Sweet. Okay. I'll take it.
All right. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and get kicked off with our reviews. We will then be talking today about Gamicon, which is the reason that Keeghan is here to join us. He is a representative of a local gaming convention from where he's at there in Cedar Rapids. I'm going to be attending it at the end of February. We'll be using that as our main topic, so we won't talk too much about it until we get to it there. And then on our way out the door, we're going to hype some games. So let's go ahead and kick things off here. Keeghan, would you please do the honors and give our first review of the day of a team game that's really made some splashes and has had an expansion here or there?
Yeah, I'm reviewing Captain Sonar. It's a team communication strategy game for about 2 to 8 people. And really, though, if you don't have at least 6 people, you're not going to have much fun with it. And you really want 8, because the basis of the game is 2 different rival submarines trying to sink each other. And on each submarine, there are 4 different stations you could be sitting at. And if you don't have a person for each station, somebody has to cover 2 stations, and it just makes the game literally twice as hard for that person and stresses them out beyond what is probably good for human beings. So the captain, basically the only thing he does is decides where you go. Well, every time he says where he wants to go, like, I'm going to go north, he has to get the okay from both his first mate and the engineer. They have to say aye, aye. And you have to say this very loudly so the other team can hear you. Because on the other side, there's a radio operator listening to everything you're saying and trying to figure out where you are on the map. Everything is plotted out with pens on, like, erasable pens on little plastic. That's in both the engineer and the first mate have to use those movements to either power up their various weapons and systems, or to get rid of damage on those systems. Because every time you move, something gets damaged. If you move in certain directions, you can get rid of the damage then. Like every time you move west, you have to put a little X somewhere in the west damage section. But if you do a certain group of 4, you get to erase all that damage. And if you have damage on any of the systems that your first mate wants to use, you can't use them. So every once in a while, the captain will be like, can I use a mine? And you look at first mate, he's like, yeah, we could use it. And the engineer's like, no, we're broken. You have to go west 2 more times, otherwise we can't use it. The really fun part about this is the teamwork it takes to do anything even remotely coordinated, because not only are you each trying to do something, you're also trying to find them and blow them up with torpedoes and mines. The downsides of this game are you need 6 to 8 people, and they have to be willing to be stressed out, and they have to be willing to get frustrated, because it'll be a frustrating game because you won't be able to find them, and you're trying to do everything you can to find them, and then all of a sudden they shoot you and you're just like, what's going on? As the radio operator, you're going to get frustrated because every once in a while somebody's going to forget to like say aye to their commands. So you don't know if they're asking like, can we go north, or did they actually go north? So it can be a very frustrating game, especially for the first time you play it. Once you've played it 2 or 3 times, it gets a lot more smooth. And what I really like about this game, and a reason I think it's great, is afterward, you're always talking about the stuff that happened in the game you just played. It would just happen like a half an hour, but it's like, oh, do you remember when we were around this island and you couldn't find us? And then you sent a drone out and you had no idea where we were, and then we came in and we hit you with a torpedo. That's always one of my signs of a great game. When you soon get done with it, you can't help but talk about the cool things that just happened.
Absolutely, that's... Go ahead.
It comes with a couple different scenarios, like different maps to go around. And the expansion, I don't have that, but I know what it adds. It adds like a couple special weapons and powers that you can add to new scenarios. But I've almost always played the first scenario, because it's not even really the scenarios that make the game fun. It's sitting there and yelling at your friends because the sonar operator has completely lost track of where the enemy is, and the engineer is telling you that everything is broken and that the submarine's about to sink, and you know the same exact thing is happening on the other side of the board.
Yeah, really, this game is... You can play it on the different maps if you get that group together that really wants to get something with a different feel to it. But I don't think, this is one that you're going to necessarily be wanting to just switch it up right off the bat. It's not like people that have played a certain map before and are going to be like, we're going to just play on that map again. I feel like this is really exactly what you described, which is you have to come into it really accepting that you're going to be stressed, but that it's going to be that sort of tight, tense, and just absolutely shot of adrenaline to the heart type of, the Pulp Fiction stab through the heart, and like everybody's going to be, yelling and you're going to be like, hey, you can't do that. Because you're putting the two teams against one another, it definitely can make it a little bit more of a frustrating experience like you described. I would say that having played, like, this game gets compared to Space Alert, which is a totally cooperative game, which is kind of similar though, where you've each got the ability to go around a ship and make sure that you don't die. And another game that was like, it was Dice Duels. I just felt like making it competitive is what really made my blood boil, when I felt like another team was sort of fudging on what they were supposed to be doing so that I didn't actually know where they were, or I didn't know what was going on. But I still think that it's a really beautiful, clean design with no extra fat added on to it. How about you, TC? Have you ever played this game?
Oh, yes. I was the guy who was trying to listen to the other side and draw like on the little transparent sheet of plastic and trying to overlay it on the map, trying to figure out everything it was. And then all of a sudden I was handed this thing. I had to draw circles around to repair the submarine, and then we sank. It was fun. What is it? Shut up, guys. Shut up, guys. I can't hear what they're saying. I think they went north, south. Shut up. I guess.
Like yelling at your own team to shut up.
I've played it like about 5 or 6 times now, and it hasn't gotten old. It's a different game each time, and each role is fairly unique. So if you switch up your roles, it's like you're playing a whole new game for yourself. And since it's like all user generated, with where you're going, where they are, what kind of weapons you're kind of focusing on, what ones they're focusing on, it always seemed like it was a different experience. Obviously of the same vein, but it didn't seem like, okay, well, I go here and I do this. It's the same as the last time.
Yeah, it's definitely the different roles vastly change your play experience. And I would say that there are certain roles. I think that the captain role and the radio operator role are kind of the two most, I would say, engaging roles. And I think that it starts to sort of taper off. And whoever is, I feel like your choices get limited, but that's not necessarily bad. It's just you've got kind of a role that's better for newer players to take on. Like I would give them either the, one of the two that's not the captain or the radio operator if it was their first game, because those other systems are generally like pretty straightforward. You've got an idea of what you need to be doing, but especially the one at the end of the table tends to not be super involved.
I will say the big advantage of more maps is if you play the same map enough times, it becomes really clear to familiar players almost assuredly where the other people are at in the map. You get really familiar with the ins and outs of a particular map if you replay it a bunch of times. So that's the sole reason for more maps, is just so that you take away that they go left, left, right, right, left, or whatever, left, up, down, north, south, east, west, whatever combination of directions will tell you approximately where they are on a given map if you're familiar with it. So that's all I say. Each map is definitely replayable several times, but you'll reach a point where some players just know it, and then you need to move on to another map, which is why I'm glad the game came with several maps.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of at that level, though, like an online shooter where, it comes with maps and you can buy more maps, which is nice for people that have played the other one. So I agree with that. And I think that it's cool that there's that for an option, but don't think that you need to get everything, especially if you're just getting in for the first time.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Keeghan. That was a really nice look. I mean, you're definitely fitting right in here. We're looking a little bit more than a couple of minute reviews, and you did an awesome job of explaining exactly why you enjoy this game. And you did not use the F word. I was very, I like prep Keeghan for this. I was like, if you just say it's fun, I'm going to ask you why. But you did a great job, man. That's exactly what I keep coming back to Captain Sonar for. So thank you very much for that. Let's hear first thoughts from TC on a game that looks to capture the attention of quite a few individuals that I podcast with.
Yes, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to get 2 initial plays in of John Company. One of the guys in my game group was managed to get a hold of a copy. We played Saturday and we played last night. We just played the beginning game. We didn't use any of the random events, which I am very excited now to try out. Very strong first impressions on this one. I'm enjoying this quite a bit more than I thought I would. I went into this not knowing exactly what to expect from it, other than the guy who designed it spoke very highly of Time of Crisis, so I was very interested in giving this thing a shot. When the guy in our game group read the rule book and we got it down, and first impression is my group went over a lot better than I thought it would, because the guys in our game group are pretty diverse. We have a guy who really leans towards cooperative games. We got my wife who likes historic games. You've got me who likes chaotic negotiating games. Then you got Steven who loves his economic games. And it all fit together quite well, and we all really enjoyed our game of it. What really took me by surprise on this one is how much of have any of you guys played a game called Kremlin or Nothing Personal, perchance?
I played Nothing Personal.
Yeah, it takes a core mechanic of that where one person's assigning roles to companies, and it wraps it around a much better theme and executes it much better. I always kind of had a soft spot for Nothing Personal, but I thought the theme was kind of goofy, and I really didn't want to play a game that was had caricatures of game reviewers on them per se. But this one, it had that part of it that I really liked, because we got this negotiation, right? We're just, no, I want to go here. Get me. You really can't promote yourself because that's nepotism and it's bad. You can't promote your own family in places of power without paying a pretty big penalty for it. It's got a very light stock market to it. Well, actually, it's not. It's an older one, so it's not a. It's a court. I think it's called a court instead of a share market. It's like a court of chairmen or something. It's pretty historically accurate. I like the way the money's handled. You have to invest in the company. And then Carissa, surprisingly, I'm kind of scared because she runs our finances in our house, figured out a way towards the end of the game of how to completely crash the company, get lots of money to win the game. So that was very entertaining. I like the fact that, you know, in like 18xx games, you're just going to get the biggest wad of money until you break the bank. This one, getting money is kind of a secondary objective. You want to invest that money because you want to retire whoever's holding the office to get these things. Like I had like a royal wedding, right? I spent like 15 or 17 pounds for a royal wedding. And the game also has a surprising amount of role playing in it if you decide to go down that route. Halfway through the game, I was telling everyone I needed like white powdered wigs because we were all being douchebag family members running this horrific monopoly and just running it well and just pillaging. It's the initial impressions are very good. We haven't played the full game. We haven't played with the events that's going to change it up a bit. I like the way the dice are used. I think, Joe, you would appreciate it because the dice, much like in Churchill, you can mitigate them. Mm-hmm. But there's still a probability that it's going to go bad. Like, okay, I've got 6 dice. And there's this chart here. It's like a 91% chance this is going to go through. All right, boom. And it just blows up in your face. And you're like, oh, crap. That didn't go well.
Yikes.
But it's done so in a very thematic way, because you're sending ships across the ocean, so you got to account for that. In fact, in the rule book itself, Cole addresses that and says that the dice rolling mechanic were integral to the game because any game that approaches this time period without some type of randomness is wishful thinking, right? So it's I'm looking forward to more plays. My biggest disappointment of this game so far is its availability. I really think that this game could have a much wider audience if it had a better distribution. I think it could be that.
It's not only does it have struggles with distribution in terms of the size and the scale, but there's been some major problems that are very unfortunate where like the company's taken a huge hit because of shipping issues. It's a long and dramatic, sad story, and I certainly hope that that the game company involved, Sierra Madre Games, is able to weather that blow.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be one of Cole. What's his name? Was we interviewing? Yeah. I think this could possibly be one of his signature games. The potential's there. I'm probably going to be talking about this one quite a while in the next few weeks because I think we're going to be hitting it that hard. We'll see how my feelings branch out on it, but so far, if you can find a copy and you're willing to invest the time to learn it, it's not that hard. It does play it plays differently, but doesn't play very. I've heard the term opaque. It's opaque at first till you understand what's going on because you're just doing stuff. You're like, I have no idea. I think I need to do this. Okay, now I know what not to do next time. But I think it's worth it. We'll see. I plan on bringing Carissa on in the future to see what she thinks. She had a strong first impression, so we'll see where it goes. So far, very, very cool game.
Well, thank you very much, TC. I think, Trent, you've been in the process of going through that rule book very recently, correct?
Yeah, like 15 minutes before I went on the air, actually. I'm really impressed with it, too. It's got that, like you mentioned, it's got that, like, role assignment kind of thing going on. It feels like it's kind of all... I don't want to say semi-cooperative, but there's an element of cooperation to it that you have to do.
Yeah, because if you don't cooperate, I mean, if you can't pay out your shares, the shareholders go away, and if you ever empty that, the game's completely over. So you do have to keep the company afloat marginally.
You have to work somewhat together to keep the company afloat. But other than that, it's also an every man for himself kind of thing. It's got an interesting dynamic. I was explaining that dynamic to my daughter because I was looking at the rules to it while she was doing an art project in the same room. And she's like, that sounds really interesting, and like kind of wanted to play it, which was interesting to me. But that dynamic is interesting to me because it's showed up in other games I like. Tammany Hall comes right to mind, as does Forged in Steel to an extent. The idea that you're like assigning roles out to other people is really cool. And I think this game does it probably better than any other game I've seen based on the rules.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm excited to give that one a try as well. Well, Trent, since we've heard a little bit from you, why don't you go ahead and give us an update on a game that has really impressed me, much more than I expected to be impressed.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Pandemic Rising Tide, which I believe has been discussed on here a couple times in the last couple weeks. I played it 3 or 4 times since the last time I talked about it on here, and I wanted to give a little bit of an update. So for those who maybe missed previous episodes, Pandemic Rising Tide is a new version of Pandemic that was designed by Matt Leacock, and then one of the people behind Splatter, whose name I'm not going to attempt to butcher, but it's one of the
Yaroon. It's Yaroon.
Yeah, Yaroon. I'm not going to even try, but
I've been corrected. That's how I know.
One of the Splatter guys, yes. Okay, so basically in this, rather than fighting off 4 diseases as you do in normal Pandemic, you're basically fighting off one super disease, which is actually just a flood. This represents the clearing out of the waters in the Netherlands and about the 1600s, 1700s, that era. And how
I think it's a little bit more current than that, but yeah.
Yeah, they're basically building up flood walls and dikes and everything and trying to keep the water out. And it's about the process they went through basically to make that happen over a period of about 100 years. Anyway, so what goes on is the oceans are gradually rising throughout the game and water is flooding in, and it's a lot like Pandemic with one really nasty, very vicious disease. The big thing that makes a difference with this game is you have dikes, and the dikes stand in the way of water basically flowing because it keeps, like, quote, effectively the disease from spreading is what they effectively do. When you do the part where the disease spreads in this game is the water, or it's called dikes fail. When you flip a card over, one of the dikes that's around the border of a particular country, when you flip that card, goes away. And then the water automatically flows, which is like the disease spreads automatically. And it just, all countries that are adjacent to an area with 3 cubes move up to having 2 cubes in them. All nations available, or all regions with 2 cubes, everything adjacent to it ends up with 1 cube in it. And that's basically what you do. If you run out of cubes, you lose. And the thing is, this game is really hard, as I found. It's extremely, extremely difficult. This is Pandemic hard mode, even if you're playing it on really easy mode. Finally, I have gotten a win at it. I finally achieved victory, and the way I did that is basically one person focused entirely on dikes along the coast. They did nothing else. That's all they did was dike focusing. And it was the only way we could figure out to get out a win at this game at all, was just one person. All they did was keep installing dikes and clearing out water cubes and putting in more dikes and clearing out more water cubes. While the other people worked together to go handle it. In fact, I would say 1.5 of the 4 players were doing nothing but dikes and water cubes. The other player did a little bit of assisting the other 2 and going around and building the 4 structures you need to win. But most of the time, they honestly just cleared water cubes and built dikes as well. Because when it starts flowing badly, when you reach level 3 and all the oceans go up to 3 cubes, you got to be ready or you lose instantly almost, if you're not prepped for it. This game teaches you a different way to play Pandemic, basically. And I feel now, honestly, if I went back and played base Pandemic, I'd be like, this is easy. Because this game is real nasty. I give it a lot of credit. And the thing is, now that I'm kind of seeing it click a little bit more, and I kind of see you can win and some of the stuff you need to do to win, I'm more engaged to play it, and I'm kind of looking forward to pumping up the difficulty and trying some of the alternate things you need to do to win. Because one interesting part is, this game comes with some alternate win condition cards. You can essentially lay out a set of 4 to 6 win conditions, whereas by default, the win conditions are build these 4 structures to win. These cards lay out alternate conditions in which you can get a victory. So you're not necessarily just trying to build all 4 structures. You might be trying to do other things. So it'd be like in base Pandemic, you're not trying to necessarily cure all 4 diseases, but you might be like, eliminate all cubes in Africa, or something like that might be an alternate win. So you get rid of red, blue, and black, and then you got to get all the cubes out of Africa instead of curing yellow.
Yep.
For example, that might be something that would be a parallel to base game Pandemic.
Yes.
That's one of the things that gives this game some legs, I think. The thing is, I haven't even scratched any of that yet. But just playing it on the simplest mode with the default win conditions has given me several plays. And this game is just fantastic. I'm thoroughly impressed. It's best Pandemic.
Yes. It's Pandemic, the new Pandemic.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting if they made a Pandemic Legacy, Pandemic Rising Tide Legacy.
Yep. I don't know about Legacy, but that's a whole different can of worms. But this is definitely my favorite version of a Pandemic without any sort of legacy word attached to it.
Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of what you said echoes my experience, Trent. I'm curious though to hear from Keeghan. Keeghan, have you played what Pandemics have you played?
I played the normal Pandemic. I played the Pandemic Legacy. I played Iberia, and I played the Cthulhu one.
Wow, so all of the Pandemics, but this one, basically.
It looks really interesting. I definitely want to play it. Get to the table at some point. I think my friend Sean recently bought it. So far, besides Legacy, my favorite one was Iberia. That was the one that seemed to have the most interesting mechanics. My least favorite one would have been the Cthulhu one. That one was just kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm of the mind that these Pandemic games, when I first see them on the shelf, I'm always like, another Pandemic game, whatever, because they're using the brand to sort of market, but really this Rising Tide is a totally new game. And Pandemic Cthulhu, as you mentioned, that it feels nothing like regular Pandemic, right? It does the same thing as Rising Tide, where you've got only one disease, quote unquote, just the cultists and whatnot, and some different ways that the evil, when new things happen. I found those to be intriguing, but I can understand, if you were looking for something different, especially Keeghan, I've heard you mention before that you play Arkham Horror, so maybe your experiences with the Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror games have led you to expect something different from a Cthulhu experience. Could that be the case?
I don't know. When I played it, I played Iberia and it almost back to back at a con, and I just enjoyed the Iberia experience much more. It felt like maybe the lack of control I felt like I had in the Cthulhu game. It felt like the actions we were taking weren't as important as the random stuff that was happening.
Huh. That's an interesting perspective. I think that Pandemic Iberia is very similar to regular Pandemic, which is a tried and true formula. If I was to recommend this to somebody who doesn't have base Pandemic, I'd say, yes, go for Iberia for sure. If you want something that's like Pandemic on steroids 2.0, then get Rising Tide like Trent's talking about. I think that Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu has some similarities with Pandemic, but I think of it more as a shorter Arkham Horror to me. So I guess I accept some of that randomness, that lack of control that you've mentioned. But, the Iberia one is cool, but the amount that it adds to base Pandemic is it's there, but it's kind of marginal, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. That railroad makes a pretty big difference. I love the railroads in Iberia.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah,
pretty
they're cool.
I love the historical thing of Iberia. It's fantastic.
I enjoy that as well. Yeah, and if you like that part, TC, I think Rising Tide is an absolute insta-buy for you because you've got something in the form of infrastructure in the dikes, and it is very historical. I mean, it is like everything that you've got, and it's also kind of adorably Dutch, and it's also my new game that is the most hilarious. I almost want to sit a little tape recorder and then just get people trying to pronounce these Dutch places as we play. It's up in Noordoos-Polder.
We just give up and we call we have one that we call Flavor Town.
Yeah, it's a Flevoland or Flevoland. It's Flavorland
or something like that.
Yep.
We just call it Flavor Town. So
I think we got the same thing with turning taxis where we just gave up pronouncing those towns.
Oh, that one has Budweiser and Pilsen.
Well, it's like almost every RPG game I've ever played. You know, like the DM will go through about 50 different names and are completely unpronounceable. We just always change them to something just, crazy, random. It's like, oh, what's his name? Yeah, that's Mark Gosling. That's exactly who that is.
Yeah. Close enough.
Yeah, like Mare Nostrum, the game Mare Nostrum is like Mark's nostril. So Yep. We got to be able to pronounce these things. Come on. We don't speak Latin anymore. You don't need your game to be in Latin. You don't need that many apostrophes in your fantasy realm. They don't constantly speak with glottal stops. It's not the land of Nyarlathotep or whatever it is in Cthulhu. It's we need to be able to pronounce these. We have practicality here. I don't want to like get the middle of a paragraph and then look like an idiot to everybody around me. Like, we sound it out. Let's go back to phonics in first grade. You sound it out. You sound it out, Joe. You got to sound it out. Oh, English is a broken language. That's why I teach Spanish. Anyhow, thank you very much for that, Trent. That was a very, very engaging review, and I'm glad that you're still enjoying it. And Jerry has talked a little bit in our comments about how the expansions that you've talked about not even cracking open add even more difficulty because there wasn't enough, as we all know.
Yeah, I've read some of them, and they seem like they're arguably harder than just building the equivalent structure. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I was like reading one of them. I was like, how do you even do that?
It's
without just dying.
I'm pretty sure that they're intended for you to play with some at that difficulty, some of the different ones, and then make sure you always play with like at least one or two of the base objectives. Because if you just play with all of those, it would be a nightmare. It'd be impossible. So that was Pandemic Rising Tide. And I'm going to do a little bit of a smorgasbord of games that are a little bit too short, a little bit too light to really make me want to review them on their own and spend my entire review on them. So I'm going to limit myself to 2 to 3 minutes for each one of these. I'm going to start with Deep Sea Adventure. It is one of the Oink games, so in a very small box. Have you tried this one, Trent?
No, that's one of the Oinks I have not tried.
All right, you're trying it next time I see you then, as long as I've got it, which it's really easy to fit into any of my boxes because it's like tiny. It's like the size of a wallet. It's really nice to be able to carry that around, and oddly enough, it comes pre-punched because it's basically just a bunch of tokens. And these tokens will have varying values on their front and on their back, and you shuffle them by their front value into unique groups. You have the 1 tiles, which are like 0 through 3, and there's 2 of each. And then you have the 2 tiles, which are 4 through 7, and it kind of goes up to 15 that way. So the amount the amount on the back is just how many points you get if you get it. So what you're all going to do here is everybody starts in the in a submarine, and you're going to be walking on a linear path that is composed of ruins. And every time that you move, you are allowed to, if you stop on ruins, pick them up. And then when you pick them up, you'll actually replace those ruins underneath you with a blank space, which makes it so that it's a space that players have to go to but cannot actually pick something up in. You're actually going to be sucking oxygen based on how many ruins you have in your possession at the start of every turn. And then after that, you're going to do, this is a roll-in move. Oh my God, it's a roll-in move. You're actually going to roll dice. Yes, TC, it's a roll-in move. But they're 2 dice that you're rolling, and they're weighted. They're 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So they're like dice. You roll 2 D3s, basically. And then you'll subtract your weight, which is also how much oxygen you suck up. You'll subtract your weight from your roll, and then you'll be able to move further down or turn around and start moving back. Your goal is to get your stuff back to the submarine. But what's hilarious is that you don't have your own air supply. You are sucking a common oxygen supply. So it's hilarious because as players get deeper down, sometimes they'll decide, I'm not going to make it back. Because if you don't make it back, there's 3 rounds, so you can, still keep picking things up, and it'll just kind of all get collected and make the overall length of the entire path shorter. It to me is a game that plays in about 20 minutes, and it just is high intensity, high stress. It's hilarious. It's a shared interaction of this oxygen. And I get to start humming Yellow Submarine for the entirety of it. So it's not a huge game. It's not an epic game, but it is definitely one that is easy to teach, plays a large amount of people, not one to take super seriously, but I've enjoyed it quite a bit, and it fits perfectly into the Oink games. So TC, it sounds like this is right up your alley, maybe.
Possibly. I'll be interested to give it a shot.
How about
many does
you?
it play?
It plays like 2 to 6.
Wow.
So, and I would say though, those like once it gets up to 6 though, it's so many turns before it comes back around to you that like, you know, I would say that in my first game with 6, everybody passed out the first turn. Like nobody got any treasure back to the submarine and got points for it. Like our second round was just like, we were all set at 0. And in our second round, one person got out with like 4 points. And you're talking like those later tiles are worth like 15 points by themselves. So it was like hilarious. It just was kind of all dependent on this last round. Like, holy crap, who's going to get what? So, I mean, it's one of those where the choices everybody makes has an impact on you, but kind of your control diminishes the more players are there. But it's such a light, silly game that I don't really care. That was Deep Sea Adventure. I am going to also talk, I'm just going to limit myself to 2 games here. I'll talk about the other one at maybe a later time or once I've played it more. Anyway, I went a little bit longer, so I'll just talk about 2. The next one coming up here is one I have in my hand. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, it's the Game of 49, which is actually kind of a pretty looking game, though it does look very mass market. The game is it's a patchwork style board, except it's numbered, starting at 1 and ending at 49, kind of going around in a circle. And it's done very much in like, it's very organized though. It's like, you know, you've got rows of 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just keeps wrapping around until you get to 49 right in the middle. Your goal is to buy spots on this board as they are auctioned off. And you'll do that just by bidding the most money. It's a very simple auction with the ultimate goal of getting either 4 in a row. So it's like Connect 4 when you're playing with 4 players or less. Or if you play with 5, the limit, it's more like tic-tac-toe because you're just trying to get 3 in a row. And every now and then a payout card will come out and you'll get $7 for every single spot you previously owned. And so what you're doing here, starting with $49, is wanting to know how much you should really bid. The thing is, the composition of this deck, which that's how these plots become available. You shuffle a deck of 60 cards, and it's composed of cards 1 through 48 and then some wild cards that let you go on different spots. And what happens, though, is you're going to be, with your first game, wanting to bid like close to the minimum bids on every card, because the minimum bids in this game are listed at like $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. Very rarely is anything starting at like, and nothing is double digits. It's all like low numbers. And so it makes you think like, I wonder how much these are worth. But in my first game, I was like, man, I know I can see how this is going. Like these spots are worth a lot. Like I was bidding like 10, 12 bucks on everything. And it's still, oh my goodness. What happens is, since you're shuffling all the payouts into this random deck, if anybody's played Lords of Vegas, that's one of the most frustrating things is when you do something expecting a payout to come and it doesn't come. And the Game of 49 is like waiting for random payoffs to the board game. It so much of your influx of money is going to depend on when a payoff comes out, and they're just, all these 12 cards are shuffled into a 60-card deck. So it could be 15 cards before you get to the next payoff. It could be 2 cards. It ends up just redistributing the wealth in a very unpredictable way, making it so that you can't really be strategic about it. And then all you're doing here is doing auctions, which are supposed to be like, you know, that's how much money this is worth. So ultimately, I'm sitting here trying to evaluate, and there's no information about when these payouts are going to come out. There's not enough information for me to really invest or care about the auction. It is a game I will never want to play again. Honestly, I considered one of the reasons I picked this up is because I was going to pull one of those, you know, board game reviewer enacting frustration on a game by just throwing it behind me. But you know what? I paid for this game with my own money. I'm not ruining it. But, you know, maybe this will turn into like an ironic prize for something Good Board Ugly related, because to me, this is one of the worst games that I have ever played. It is absolutely atrocious. It's not one that I could ever see recommending to anybody unless what I've described sounds like, oh no, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with playing an auction game where every dollar counts, but you get randomized payouts and you have no idea when it's coming. So basically take that crappy part of Lords of Vegas, take everything else out, and instead add Tic-Tac-Toe / Connect 4, and you have the Game of 49, a total trash heap in my personal opinion, and a game that I wish I hadn't paid, even though I got like a super cheap bargain bin deal on it. It was too much to pay, and now I have to go find something to do with this thing. So anyway, That's the game of 49.
I don't want to make you feel worse than you already do, but I saw like 6 copies of that at Goodwill for like $2, and they're still on the shelf.
I didn't pay that much more than that, but yeah, the shipping alone to get this to me would have been that. But I had heard a really positive review out there, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus for it, but different strokes for different folks. You will not get this game on my recommendation unless you're looking for exactly what I described. Trent, next weekend?
No.
I'll be sure you can play that and Credit Mobilier together. How about that, Trent?
No.
Well, I think, Keeghan, for Gamicon, for the convention, you do people volunteer to teach games, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Well, sign me up.
Gotcha. Yeah. We'll put you down. We'll find you a table. And you can teach all comers the game of 49.
And I'm gonna do it in a very sarcastic voice the whole time. It's gonna be like, "Well, how much is everything worth? You've played this game before." And I'll be like, "I have no idea. I don't think there's any real way to know because it's just
there is no information."
Yeah, it's randomly shuffled, roughly 1 in every 5 cards. But if you try to count on that, prepare to be burned. Prepare to hate the game. So, yeah, the game of 49, definitely when I'm going to come and I want everybody's first impression of me for a bunch of fellow Iowans, but people who haven't met me before. I want them to get my sarcastic teaching of the game of 49.
It'd be funnier if they didn't know you were being sarcastic. You're like, "This is my favorite game. I just play this all the time."
And then as things happen, I'll just every time a card flips and I don't get my payout, I'll be like, "Oh God, oh." So just keep getting more and more despondent.
If I live closer to you guys, I would have Joe with that game on one table, and I'd be next to him with Deadly Premonition, the board game, and we could see how many suckers we get and see who wins.
We're gonna try to make a fusion of these two, the deadly game of 49. My next game of it might cause me to get like some sort of pop a blood vessel or something, bust something in my head. But man, it's definitely not the type of game that I would show. But to bring it back to Gamicon, which is what we're going to be talking about for our topic, it's going to be mainly you here carrying the heavy load, Keeghan. But you knew you were in for that. Gamicon, I'm excited for what's coming up, man. February 23rd to 25th, and it's a local gaming convention. I want you to tell us all about why you love Gamicon here. That's our topic. Keeghan is a representative of. You're like a volunteer coordinator from Gamicon, and you're going to be telling us all about it.
Well, it's the 27th year of Gamicon. It's usually held either in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City. It bounces back and forth like every 2 or 3 years. We have a large group in both cities, and they try to want to accommodate that so that not every year somebody has to drive, make the other people drive. If there's a lot of information at gamicon.org. There are hundreds of events, card games, board games, RPGs. There's a huge game library of games you can just go and check out and play all day. There's a ton of play-to-win games. You check them out of the library, like the library games, and you play them, put your name down, and at the end of the con, it'll be randomly drawn. People will win those games that you've already played. There's a video game room. There's a great auction that always has a lot of cool stuff. There's always a lot of vintage stuff, a lot of vintage RPG stuff, a lot of vintage games, a lot of great deals. There's a costume contest for anybody coming there in cosplay. We got some great guests this year. We've got Kane Klinko of Fuse and Flip Ships. He'll be demoing some games. We have Aaron J. Riley. He's an illustrator who's done a bunch of covers for WotC and Lucas and Fantasy Flight and Catan and Piazzo. You can go to the website right now and register, I believe, for another day or two. And if you come on the days of the con, if you come on Friday, it'd be $20 for the whole day. Saturday's $25, Sunday's $15. But the events themselves, after you paid your entrance fee, are all free. You can go to the website. There's a list of all the events and if they're available and how many people and who's running them. And but once you get there, there'll usually be open spaces and tons of events. You can go and sign up that day on, right before the event, and walk into a table and play a ton of fun games for just the entry fee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like quite a bit of fun games. So it's, comparing it like library wise, would you say kind of from a hobby gamer's perspective, it sounds like there's all kinds of great tables and there's going to be a lot of cool games being taught, but should I kind of bring games that I'd like to play, or should I expect to come and be able to find the games that would be recent releases on the shelves?
There's usually a pretty healthy mix of newer and older games. If there was something specifically you wanted to play with people, I would bring it. Usually you see the people that come bring maybe like 1 or 2 games that they're really interested in. But there are just a vast number of games that you could find. Like I found those 2 pandemic games last year, and I found, what did I play? Istanbul was great. I ran last year Cold Express and Galaxy Trucker, and I ran Sheriff for a group of 10 to 12-year-olds. So it's just a wide variety of different things.
Cool. Yeah. What I was really impressed of going to visit my little brother in Cedar Rapids a couple weekends ago, I was impressed to see representatives of Gamicon at all of the local board game groups, not just there to play games, but also there to try to recruit your core gamers to try to teach games. And that way you're gonna find all kinds of different games on the agenda. So like, for example, Gaia Project, the newest things that might not necessarily be in a board game collection that's not necessarily going to be something like a Gen Con library where it's a rented library that that travels around to several different conventions. I mean, you're still going to be able to find, if you look at the signups and stuff, a lot of the newest games that have just come out, just hit this the markets here in the US.
Exactly. We're always looking for more GMs and more volunteers. On the website, you can find spaces to sign up for some volunteer time. We always appreciate that. This year, for every hour you volunteer, you'll get basically a Gamicon buck, which you can use to buy stuff in the dealer room. It will be, so because we have obviously people in the dealer room selling board games from local shops. And so anytime you volunteer, that can lead to more games. The GMs, there'll be a raffle this year for like every hour you GM, you could raffle ticket and you can win a couple door prize games just for being a GM. So we're trying to give some incentives for as many people as possible to come and play games and share games and meet new people, and hopefully leading to playing more games during the year and coming back to Gamicon and seeing everybody again. Cool.
So you've been involved with Gamicon for how many years?
This is my 4th year. The first year I was just an attendant. I volunteered heavily last year, and I joined staff this year as one of the volunteer coordinators. I'll be at the registration counter for most of the con, except for when I'm running a few games, directing volunteers to the different rooms and areas where they're needed.
Okay, cool. In the several years that you've been working with Gamicon, how have you seen the convention evolve?
I'd say maybe like a 10 or 20% increase in attendance over those 4 years. It definitely seems like there's more people every year, a much wider variety. Last year we only had the Pathfinder Society, and now we have a Pathfinder Society, and we have some people from 5th Ed coming out as well. So the RPG group is going on, and we always have a ton, it seems, of independent RPG runners, people running very kind of those smaller, unique systems you see on Kickstarter, on like Drive-Thru RPG.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I myself am interested in at some point trying to get into like a one-shot RPG, specifically of the one that's where you're playing Jenga. What's that one called, Trent? Where you're playing Jenga? And
Um,
Oh, Dread.
Dread.
That's
it.
right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to try that one. So I need to get through those events and see if there isn't going to be one. Because I'm hoping to hopefully get to chance to participate in some of those events as well as you know, be around and do some things kind of as in a bit of a press capacity. So, but I'm definitely looking forward to playing games primarily because that's what you have said is mainly going on at this convention. So, you really see at these local conventions and, you know, kind of the smaller conventions, a focus on just playing games. You know, it's less about the spectacle and more about playing games. However, even with Gamicon being a smaller local convention in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, you also mentioned that there is some cosplay. So you know, what would you say? Have you ever attended like Gen Con or any other sort of cosplay heavy conventions?
Yeah, I've been to Gen Con 2 or 3 times. I mean, obviously, the numbers, you know.
Sure.
But the percentage is still about the same. There's like a good 10 to 15 to 20 people in some really cool, really interesting costumes that you can see that they've really taken the time and put effort and thought into, and they're always really cool. I think on the website from last year, there's still maybe some of the photos up from the winners last year. We always take as many photos as we can as possible for them to get a little publicity, because obviously they've worked very hard on that stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I could definitely like look at it and be like, "Ooh, that was a lot of work," but it's definitely something that I'm not. It's not going to be the reason that I'm coming to the convention. Specifically speaking of that, though, Keeghan, what in your time at Gamicon is your single favorite memory? What's the best memory of either a game or an event or whatever, you know, working with or attending Gen Con, or not Gen Con, sorry, Gamicon?
I think my favorite is the first time I GM'd a game my second year, because I hadn't done it like in public very often. So I was real nervous and I was really hoping it would go well. And I was running Colt Express and everybody had a really good time and they like immediately wanted to play again. So I set it back up for them and they played like the advanced mode, and just listening to them play, because I actually had enough people that I wasn't actually playing, just play and laugh and enjoy the game that I had just taught them. It was, I think, my favorite memory.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd like to contrast Gamicon and the other conventions that are offered in Cedar Rapids with the Des Moines, Iowa offering. And we're talking here on a very small scale, and I know that for a lot of our audience here, this is not necessarily going to apply to you directly, but just to use this as sort of a lens to view conventions through. I've attended Gamicon, I've attended Demicon. Demicon is the Des Moines, Iowa convention. And now Demicon, it's like one single convention, and it says that it encompasses all aspects of geek culture, essentially. It includes gaming, it includes science fiction, it includes cosplay, RPGs. And when I attended, I was largely doing so based on advertisements I read on like websites, I read on flyers, and I brought a tub of games. And then I went in to see, you know, like who else was going to be playing games. And it was like there was a Scrabble tournament at one point. And aside from that, it was an empty room full of what looked like a bunch of boxes that were carried in from somebody's grandma's attic. Oh, and it was a very disappointing experience. And I still had to pay quite a bit to get in. And I feel like, you know, they were trying to attract these people, but they weren't trying to really do their due diligence and actually get like, you know, pay attention to the actual community. And even later on, I saw a bit of an outreach effort, but it was like they put one person in charge of a committee, and then that person like sent out an email or sent out like a Facebook message. It was just like a public message. It was just like, hey, everybody, I want to know what type of things you're looking for at Demicon. And everybody was just like really seemed to respond, and then nothing happened. Nothing happened, and it was really disappointing. And I feel like that's because Demicon is like one convention that's trying to push itself into 3 or 4 different spheres that really don't necessarily attract the same audience. Gamicon, on the other hand, is headed by an organization that acknowledged and recognized that there's more than not everybody who comes to a convention about anime is going to want to also attend a convention about board games or vice versa. So you've got 3 different conventions there that I'm aware of. Icon, which is a science fiction convention, probably similar to what Demicon is over in Des Moines. You've got AnimeCon. You've got Gamicon. So I mean, it's not that there isn't, like you mentioned, there's cosplay and whatnot at Gamicon, but it's also I think going for like it's supporting its community, and it listens to its community. And you guys are out there actually playing games at the local game nights. You know where the gamers are. You know where to find them. It's not like we're gonna make a bunch of guesses or we're just gonna send out a little thing. Like, you're actually playing games with them. So I just wanted to say that to me is a big distinction. I don't know if drawing lines in the sand and saying, well, this is going to be our convention for this, or this is going to be our convention for this, is how to be successful. But I definitely know that your community outreach and the way that the convention is focused to what I'm looking for makes it one of those things where, provided I can get the time in, and provided the date works for me, it seems like something that I'm going to want to be doing much more in the future. So Keeghan, it's cool what you're doing as a volunteer coordinator, and I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to come to something that's really local. Because let's all be honest here, Keeghan, we're out in the middle of cornfields here. There's not many, there's not. First of all, what's nice is there's not much else to do but play board games, but that's also kind of a double-edged sword. It's why does anybody want to come here? Well, there's nothing else to do besides play board games.
Yeah, we going out and talking to the people at the different game stores and at community centers and public libraries, just to get a more personal connection with the people that are coming to the con is important to our staff and our volunteers. We're not huge. We're not massive. A lot of us know each other. And I wouldn't say it's like, it's kind of a family atmosphere. There's just a friendliness to almost any of the tables you sit down with to play a game. Even if it's a competitive game, everybody's helping each other learn the rules, and, oh, maybe you should do this. So, it's just a real fun vibe.
Oh, fun. Thank you very much, Keeghan, for dropping the F-bomb on this podcast. I'd like to hear from Trent and TC. Let's start with you, Trent, because it's connected to the same regional area. What's your experience with local conventions, and what are you looking for specifically when you attend a local convention?
My experience with local conventions is not much in the gaming sphere. I've been to local conventions for other things, but mostly, honestly, I'm looking for people to get to know locally. I look at it as an opportunity to say, if I went to a local board gaming convention, one of the big things I'd be looking for is to look for people that I could play with beyond just the convention. Because this is a group that I know is largely going to be people of my area who share a common interest. That means potential friends. That means people I might end up playing games with outside of the convention. So that's often what I'm looking for.
For sure. TC, you're in a totally different region, like totally different region in the United States. It's a totally different environment. Could you tell me about your local gaming convention scene there? And same questions as Trent.
Oh, well, excuse me. I'm fortunate that the local conventions we have here, we are very close to Seattle, which means Pazio usually has a pretty big influence in our local convention. So, you were talking about wanting to do a one-shot, Dungeons and Dragons style game at our conventions, especially at Game Storm, which is our big local convention here. There's multiple opportunities to get into like a single scenario Dungeons and Dragons game, because there's people who come out who run those all the time. Also, Wizards of the Coast is up in Seattle, so they usually have a pretty big local presence. And there's some interesting local celebrities up here, like Zellenker's up here. What's his first name? I can't think of it. The guy who did Betrayal at House on the Hill. Help me.
That was done by a guy. I thought that was designed by committee.
Mike, yes, thank you, Mike Zellenker. That's him. Yes, and that guy is. If you ever can get with him and get him drinking, oh my goodness, that guy is a riot. It's funny. So there's interesting local personalities up in this area, and then they occasionally get Jeff from Tasty Minstrel Games. So it's interesting, but it's, and then we also have a pretty big you guys were mentioning cosplay. There's a big anime convention up here called KimuraCon that GameStorm always breaks out their gaming library up at that event. So while my daughter's off doing anime stuff, I can just sneak back to the board game room and play my board games while she's doing all that stuff. So it's but mainly it's a lot of at our local conventions, like all the Magic players come out, and that's an interesting funk when the Magic players gather around.
The smell, the actual smell. What's interesting, TC, is that you bring up the smell, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the location of Gamicon this year, is actually called the City of Five Smells. Well, it's technically the City of Five Seasons, but the locals have their own take on it.
Well, just so you know, the hotel is not near the river, so it doesn't smell as bad.
Is it by the sewage treatment plant, though? Because that can be another issue.
No.
Another local convention I like.
Cornflake, or is it by there's the Quaker Oats where they've got like the cornflake smell? Anywhere near that?
Nope. That's downtown. This is kind of over near the outskirts. Everybody's fine. Our factory is all good.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Wake up and smell the crunch berries.
And I'm also fortunate. There's another up in Seattle. They have a little invite-only gathering called Sasquatch, where this, I don't know how they actually do it, but they bring in like all the games they can from Essen, so you can try them out before they're released domestically. So that's kind of fun. You get these games that I think this is in English. Hang on, I gotta get to like the 30th page of this rule book to see if there's an English translation, and hopefully it's language independent. So that's always a good amount of fun to do, because they just don't bring the boxes. They just cram as much as they can in suitcases. They'll put everything in Ziploc bags and throw the box away and just cram as much as they can to get out.
Oh no!
Does anybody speak Dutch?
Yeah, anybody here? Hey, you'll be good at Pandemic Rising Tide. Can you pronounce these for me? So just a little selfish question here. I really love some of the local eats in Cedar Rapids. Specifically, there's some really good microbreweries in the area, and I believe last time I was there, I went to the one that's it's actually in Iowa City, but there's two of them, one in Solon and one in Iowa City, I believe. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's huge, absolutely huge. And when you buy food, you actually have to go up, and it's like you're going to a concession stand. Is there any good food near the convention? Because I know it's kind of in a hotel. And as I recall, that hotel is, you might need to get into your car to actually go get food.
The hotel does have a restaurant, and it's pretty good. They usually have some deals during the lunch during the convention. There's a Chili's nearby. Obviously, there's a lot of fast food restaurants nearby. Just down the way, there's a mall with a Cheddar's. There's a Grant City over there. There's a Red Lobster.
Yeah, there's quite a few. It's really close to the mall. And I mean, let's all be honest here, though. Unless it's right next door, it's Iowa, it's February, you ain't walking.
The Chili's is literally right next door. So that's that. I think I went to Chili's once last year, and then I ate at the hotel for one of the lunches the other time, and then I think I went to Wendy's, the other one. They're all real close. They're all within a couple minutes. I think if you go the other way, you can get there's a couple good Mexican restaurants near there too.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few options, definitely within driving distance, yeah, within like a few minutes. So and it is once again it's the Midwest. So what the one like resource that we have is space, and unlike Gen Con and all these other conventions, there's not way more people than the town is built to handle. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a great weekend of games. I'm looking forward, hopefully, to get a chance to play a game or two with you, Keeghan. And I appreciate you telling me all about Gamicon.
No, I look forward to that. That'll be really cool.
All right, so now, as we always do at the end of every episode, we are going to hype up games that we are looking forward to. And I would like to hear first from Trent. Trent, could you please go into detail on this game that you are quite excited about?
Okay. Hold on just a second.
It's like it's Captains of Industry, so it's like a game that was on bargain budget for a while, but I think you picked it up.
Just skip me for just a second, all right? Go on to TC and come back to me, please.
Well, I go first. I'm scared.
Well, actually, you know what? We'll just skip over everybody here, everybody but Keeghan, because Keeghan, we've just brought up Betrayal, with that being a local sort of feature there in Portland. And you're talking about mixing together two very interesting things. One that I'm wondering will maybe make Betrayal a little bit more relevant for me as somebody who's been there, done that.
Yeah, Betrayal Legacy, supposedly coming out sometime this year. I'm really looking forward to it. I have a lot of friends who really enjoy the horror genre, and from what I'm reading, the Legacy sort of thing is like a multi-generational sort of legacy thing. So some of the people who survived the first will come back. Sometimes it'll be their like relatives. So like the mansion or the house that is haunted is gonna have a history that grows. Like, oh, this happened 20 years ago, and now in the anniversary of that, something else weird is gonna happen. So it'll be almost like a movie series where you keep coming back to this terrible place. And your family's trying to purge it of its evil.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Mysterium when you describe it that way.
Yeah, another game I love. So I really have high hopes for it. Maybe I'm getting my hopes up too high, but I've never really had a bad Betrayal game. Some of my friends have. When they've rolled particularly badly, but I've never had a terrible one, and it always seems to end in an interesting way.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people enjoy about Betrayal, is that the ending of the game is always very unique. So,
have you played the expansion to Betrayal House on the Hill?
The Widow's Walk? I haven't got to play it yet, man. What like it adds some extra new scenarios, right?
Yeah, they have. I've heard that some of those scenarios are pretty memorable and pretty good. And I was talking to Zelenker about that particular expansion, and somehow he Shanghai the guy who designed the Legacy games. What's his name? Robert Davio. That's his name. Yeah, he got Shanghaied him to do a slight Legacy scenario for that expansion. So you might want to check it out. I can't speak to it, but I've heard some mixed things on it. But the way I've heard most people who played it talk to it, it sounds pretty interesting.
I've heard that like some of the scenarios are very, very cool, and then some kind of fall down. So depending on what scenario you get, you could either have a really good time or you could be disappointed.
Sounds like Betrayal.
Yeah.
Betrayed. All right, well, TC, you're up now. The Dungeon Pets.
Yes, I was very excited. I managed to run down a copy of the Dungeon Pets expansion, the Dark Alley expansion. So I brought it home. I was like, "Hey, Kate, look, we got it." So we opened it up, and oh my goodness, Joe, have you looked at this one at all?
I've looked at it, but I haven't got a chance to really play with the expansion, I believe.
So it's got like there's like cages that have like a hospital that can take care of sickness. There are pets that eat anything. You can send your pet to a pet psychologist. There's a fecal slug that can clean your kit. It looks oh my goodness. Me and Kate were just laughing our rear end off reading the instruction book and looking at the components to this. We are very excited to integrate this thing into the base game and give it a shot. I think it's going to be a hit. And of course, Kate has taken the rule book and has insisted that she has to read it first and teach me how to play it, which is fantastic. But yeah, it looks like it's going to add some, in typical Vlada fashion, add some unique humor, a really well-written, hilarious rule book, and it's going to give. I'm curious what's going to add to the base game, to be quite honest, and how it's going to affect it. It looks like it makes the game a little longer, add some more rounds. So I'm excited. I can't hide my enthusiasm with this one. I'm very excited to give this one a shot and integrate it into the base game.
I wish I had more to say about it, TC. I've actually never played with the expansion, so I own it, but I find that every time I play Dungeon Pets, it seems like I'm always teaching it, and it's definitely one of those expansions you want to hold off until you're playing with people who know it.
And then just as a side note, we did, me and Kate, we did sit down and we played Dungeon Lords. And she was really disappointed at first. She's like, we're just doing the same thing for 4 turns. And then the adventurers came knocking, and she loved it at that point. She was just like, oh, I get to kill these guys. Look at this. Yeah, monster traps. Yeah, you're dead. You're dead.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And it's crunchy, man. Like, the way to most efficiently defend your dungeon is very the game comes with like 4 puzzles pretty much to just teach you the game mechanisms. It's cool.
And then I did mentioned it in passing after we did Dungeon. I was like, hey, Kate, if you like games where you're trying to deal with bad things happening to you after you build something, we need to get you to try Galaxy Trucker.
Yeah, for sure, man. You're getting her hooked onto Vlada right from the start. Yes.
So I told her, like, ships ran, blow up, and she's like, she's on. So yeah, my hype's probably gonna be about Vlada games for a while.
Yes, one of us.
And I blame you. You and Dungeon Pets. You brought this on, Joe. You brought this on.
I'm actually feeling nothing but pride right now, deep down, TC. So and I know that's not what you wanted. So it feels terrible. It's awful.
It's great. It's great. It's awesome.
I'm so happy to hear that, man.
My favorite manual of any game I own.
Yes.
Galaxy Trucker?
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And, I actually recently read something that was a very just fascinating page on BGG. It was a designer diary, except it was from the perspective of the guy who translated the Galaxy Trucker rulebook. And he was talking about how to maintain the comical flavor across language and culture barriers. Absolutely fascinating from a language nerd like me, but also he was so successful. That game is hilarious.
Yeah. And I told Kate the first time I played Galaxy Trucker, I was trying to build my ship and I couldn't get the pieces work. I'm like, I got this good ship, but I got the Death Star trench in this thing. But, as long as it doesn't take this one thing straight to the middle of my ship, I'm going to be fine. First round of that race, a meteor strikes it dead in the middle. I don't even get past the start line. Just, I'm gone. At that point, Kate really wanted to play the game.
Watching that happen would have actually been entertaining for me, I think, TC.
Oh, it was. That was entertaining for me, too. I'm like, did I just die? Yep. Well, that was actually kind of cool.
But TC, people get so good at this game that I've seen somebody play on the most difficult, the highest difficulty, the most difficult ship to build, and just be essentially make a ball, just an absolutely totally fortified ball that flies through space at lightning speed, the speed of light, faster than everybody else, stronger than everybody else, has all the guns, has everything. So the next level is definitely there for this one, but it involves tackling a timed round, which is really difficult for a lot of folks because it can be really frustrating.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, when I hear people talk about this game, not to get on too much of a tangent here, it's like, it's a skill game. It is. And it's always interesting to hear people talk about it's like, well, it's too random. I can't do things fast enough. And it's just too random. Like, no, actually, I've seen people play this who actually are very skilled at being able to do things, build things under a time crunch. So I don't think it's very random at all, but oh well.
If you build a good ship, you will make it through much better than the person who builds a bad ship. If it's whoever builds the best ship. Now, people think, oh, those cards are random. Yeah, but if you have a good ship, it doesn't matter what cards come up. You're going to handle it much better.
Yeah. You know, don't put your little pod of people right on the outside so they're just flying off. That's the best part, when those people just start flying off into space and your ship's not piloted anymore. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's Vlada is just, yeah, we could talk all night about the amazingness that is Vlada, but we're instead going to move on here to talk about my hype game, which is, I'm not sure if to call it a hype game or to call it just a puzzle, but it's something I'm very intrigued by and something I've gotten a chance to try out, but I want to really see how far it's taken. And this game is called Brains, and there's several different versions. There's one that's like about faces and emojis, it looked like, which I'm really intrigued and want to pick that one up because I don't have it. But I've got currently the Treasure Maps one and then a Japanese Garden one. What these games are is they were designed by Reiner Knizia. And if you can imagine something like Suro, like a game like Suro where it's simple tile laying, except you're trying to solve a specific puzzle that connects different exits and entrances on the outside of the board by passing through certain things that are on these tiles that you're using. And the game has 50 different puzzles in it, 50 different ones. Each one just has one solution, though. So once you play it, that's it, you know. But to me, this seems like kind of the perfect game to bring to a game night. It's small. And if there ever is a time when, you know, like I show up and there's like 15 minutes to kill waiting for other people to get done with their game, I can just get this out and it's just a puzzling. I can put it away at any time. But if you can just picture Suro plus like a Sudoku puzzle sort of thing, that's kind of where it's at. So it got a little bit more flavor than a Sudoku puzzle. It reminds me quite a bit of the video game The Witness, which involved solving puzzles by just drawing a single line across essentially a field of some sort, you know, like a playing area. But it got so complex within that. And I'm interested to see, because I've just played the first 4 scenarios and they were very simple. But as soon as I got to the 5th one, it was like it wasn't quite as obvious. And what it's advertised as is a game in which just brute forcing it, aka taking all the tiles and trying all the options, is not the most efficient. Like, you end up needing to use logic to solve these puzzles, which is what you really want out of a puzzle game. You know, like, you don't want one where it's just like try all the different options. Obviously you could kind of do that, but it gets really really messy with how many different options there are. It's like there's 8 different tiles, there's 3 different spots, so it's 8 times 7 times 6 different options, and then every tile has 4 different orientations. It gets ridiculous how many options there are, but you end up being able to like solve the more simple ones extremely quick. And the game comes with hints if you want that, you know, like a first tile placed and stuff. So I'm really excited because Reiner Knizia is I think on a bit of an upswing here. He's getting back to designing games that have something that gets to the purity of a certain mechanism. And I'm really interested to see, though, that he's tackled these specific puzzles. You know, the doctor of mathematics is back at it, and he's back on my radar with Brains.
Let's do it.
Well, I need to bring both copies so we can do it, Trent. Otherwise, it's let me do it and you can do, you know, yours, but it's solo. So, well, Trent, it sounds like you're back, and would you please tell us now about Captains of Industry?
Okay, so Captains of Industry is a game I was almost hoping to hype with Andy. Unfortunately, Andy could not be with us tonight. Because I think this is a game that's right up his alley. I actually had this game a long time ago, and I put it on the table once about 2.5 years ago with a different game group, and there was no interest. Because this is a 3 to 5 player, perfect information economic game. And as you can tell from that very description, it's not really something that's going to appeal to some people, but that's something that would probably definitely appeal to Andy. Essentially what you're trying to do is the game's owned by the player that sells the most goods by the end of the game, and you're just trying to get an economic engine going, but that economic engine really requires cooperation of the other players, because you're building new production facilities and so on, and they're getting good at some goods, and you may need some of those goods to improve your own production facilities. So there's a lot of like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine going on all throughout the game, tons of it. But then when someone gets their own engine going, then they're kind of in good shape a little bit. So you can either be like very cutthroat where no one really gets anything going on, or everybody kind of cooperates and things get going. Honestly, when I read the rules of the game, I was reminded of the most of was Container. So that kind of sums it up for you a little bit. I'm looking forward to playing it. I want to get this on the table. There was someone who was trying to sell me a used copy for $20. So I turned around and found a new copy for $15. So, yeah.
Was it at Goodwill?
No, it was not at Goodwill. It was at a local game store in our town, Mayhem. It was down in the basement.
Ah, on that half price day, huh?
Yep.
Nice. Nicely done.
So I'm looking forward to playing it.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds interesting, but the increased playtime and the comparison to Container is not exactly sitting perfectly with me. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to see what you guys think about it after you've played it, maybe.
Okay.
So, but if you need another, okay. All right. Well, it's been a great episode here, guys. We've efficiently made it through all the things that we had to say. I'm pumped to be attending Gamicon. I look forward to getting to meet you more in person, Keeghan. It was an awesome time hearing from Trent and TC, and also all of our folks in the chat. You've contributed some really interesting points that I tried to bring up as we were doing our episode. So anyhow, this has been an episode of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. I'm the host of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly, Joe Salen. I've been joined tonight by our special guest, Keeghan Reynolds. Keeghan, it's been great having you.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope to see a lot of people that are listening at Gamicon come up to me as we at the reservation table. I'd love to meet you.
Excellent. Yes. Also joining me has been TC Reed.
My voice made it. Yay.
And finally, Trent Ham.
Hi there. Bye there.
No, that's not from Tuesdays with Maury, is it? That's actually a you quote.
And it's actually me. I'm not gonna make people suffer with Tuesdays with Maury. Not tonight, anyway.
Not tonight. Okay. Nope. All right. Well, that's been this episode of The Good, the Board, the Ugly. Catch us next week on the next episode of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly.